Hey everybody, welcome to our next episode, and I am so excited to be sitting with my guests. So if you guys are watching, I will not do the introduction because I will mess it up. So Frank, if you would introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Frank Pisano, I'm CEO of Bluefin International, and I've been doing it now for, I guess, a little over a year and 4 months.
So what's Bluefin? For people that don't know.
For people that don't know, we're deeply involved in the digital signage community. Okay. We make a lot of all-in-one custom displays with built-in operating systems. And we work with the entire digital signage ecosystem, so it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. But you and I have known each other for a long time.
We have. We don't want to go way back there. That's multiple decades.
That's multiple decades. Well, I say, once you know people, this business is so incestuous.
You were like 5 or 6 when I met you.
No, I was not. I was close, though. Please, Frank, I'm older than that. So where were you working when we met each other?
So I actually was working at Chief before It was all the fancy names with Milestone and now Legrand. I was working at Chief, and then I did a little stint at Bright Sign too for a little over 5 years. So that's how, with Chief, I started getting involved in the digital signage community. Obviously, that was deeply entrenched in the AV roots. And then Bright Sign, obviously, is one of the industry leaders in media players. So I got a chance to work closely with Bluefin, and it was an easy transition for me.
Awesome. Which is great because everybody has a different feel for what they do in the AV industry and where they end up. So everybody starts somewhere and they're always in someplace different. But so as everybody knows with my podcast, I talk about people and talk to people who are hiring, looking for jobs or whatever. So you just had a position for marketing.
I did. Actually, we just filled a bunch of positions at Bluefin. We've been growing nice and rapidly, and I've had obviously the chances of doing a lot of hiring when I was with Chief and then again at Bright Sign. So we just did hire a marketing director. It was a great hire, and we're super excited. Yeah. And we're actually hitting the ground running before unfortunately.
Don't give the name out.
I will not give the name out.
We're going to just say that person is slated to talk to me.
Okay, great.
So were you looking for, if I remember correctly, I don't think you were looking for a director of marketing. You were looking for just seemed like an entry-level kind of marketing position?
I would say it was entry-level. We were starting to do a lot of branding at Bluefin and getting the brand known in the AV circles as well as the brand is very well known in the retail vertical, but we were trying to expand that, our net, and capture other vertical markets. So our branding has been a top focus, and then we started doing it a lot with trade shows. So the position started out saying, I need some help coordinating these trade shows, telling a story, and really just helping with a lot of logistics. So at first it looked like more of a marketing coordinator role. Okay. And then it kind of evolved over time.
So that initial job application, if somebody was looking online to see it, was there AV experience required? Was that something you were looking for?
So we actually had years of experience. We had different degrees we were looking for, but no, AV wasn't necessarily specifically noted, especially since digital signage is kind of niche within AV. Right. It wasn't specifically noted, but it would have definitely been helpful. But honestly, you know this, my circles and my network is very entrenched in AV, and a lot of the candidates that came to us were AV.
Were AV people. So you were open to talking to somebody that wasn't potentially in the AV space.
I was. And we have we're a nimble organization, a little smaller than other organizations I've worked for in the past, so we're nimble. And one thing that really kind of came out of the process is meeting with all these candidates. There's a lot of people with chops in other areas that we knew that could help Bluefin, whether that helped us with demand generation or other really do better lead scoring and tracking. Right. There's a lot more that I think we determined we were needing after we met a lot of these candidates that had those skill sets.
So for marketing, it's a little bit different than we talk with sales, right? So when you talked about years of experience and degree, what were you looking for with that?
Originally when we were looking at marketing coordinator-ish, it wasn't a crazy amount of experience in that. It was just experience of putting together and helping with events.
Got it.
Because that was the main focus of the job. But obviously that's still being a need for us because we're doing a lot of exhibits. I mean, a lot of the folks probably listening to this probably may not have heard of Bluefin 2 years ago, right? And we were doing a lot of things with branding, getting out there more to different vertical markets, to more of the AV specific shows. So somebody that had that skill set was super helpful for us, and it was still a need in the position, but it obviously expanded, and we found we got a lot of excitement from a lot of people. We had a lot of resumes. I think we were somewhere around the 70 resume mark. So some of the ones that made that cut were some folks that I originally had relationships with, or I had seen their work before.
Right.
So when you're lucky enough to have that many candidates, you can be a little bit more picky in what you're looking for, and I think it surprised us. We had a lot of junior level folks that were probably responding more to the specific advertisement we had on their job description, and then we had some very senior level folks. So at first I was having a tough time finding that sweet spot in between, because I was getting CMO level candidates, and I was also getting folks that were a year or two out of school.
Right. So do you think having that network helped?
So honestly, I've hired a lot of positions since we've been at Bluefin. We've had a lot of growth. The network absolutely helps. It allows me to not go to a recruiter, at least at first. If I'm having an issue, or if it's an operational role or something a little bit different than where my network can feed into that, or I'm looking for a specific geography. Honestly, this marketing role we're talking about, started in Atlanta. I wanted somebody that was close to the office, that can come in and be impactful from a culture perspective around the office. But when you find superstars or somebody that fits your role and your make, and if they happen to be outside, we're small enough and nimble enough to go after the right candidate that can be that fit.
So, person that you ultimately ended up hiring, did that person reach out to you directly, or was that a recommendation from someone?
A little of both, but when the recommendations come in, and one thing that's really powerful in this market is the references that aren't references. Right. When you're not necessarily putting them on your reference sheet, but there is a lot of people that you're connected to that know these folks. And we did narrow down the list pretty good, and references become a major factor. And marketing can actually see some of the work that they've done, which is nice. It's much more visible than some of the other roles that they can have. Like, somebody that manages the P&L, they're not really going to share another company's P&L, right?
No, they're not. They're not putting that on their LinkedIn profile.
A little bit probably inappropriate to do that.
Yes, I don't think that's beneficial.
So marketing is luckily you get to see some of the work. You actually get a feel for some of the things and how that would fit within the culture.
Yeah. So with that aspect, knowing that you can see some of the work, how much of it did you take was maybe that actual person, or the company saying it needs to look like this? Because I've worked for a manufacturer, I've worked with marketing departments, different areas, and I have, as the salesperson, target my audience in a specific way and think my marketing person might be on board, but now you look at above them and they go, no, that doesn't fit.
Right.
So how much of that was important? Was it you see it and then you kind of ask some questions without really saying,
there's a sweet spot for sure. So I'm most people know I'm a culture fit person first. Are they going to interact well with both the internal customers, which is their the other staff within Bluefin, and are they going to fit and potentially be able to help be that voice external to the market too? So there's that sweet spot there from a culture fit, and there's also the things that they can bring to the table immediately and make that an immediate impact. And I think Bluefin, it needs that immediate impact for sure, and especially as we continue to expand our net into other vertical markets with net new customers. And then we do so much in the digital signage ecosystem. The ecosystem of content management software companies and consultants and other folks that are involved in services are very impactful for our lead generation. Like, they are the ones recommending us, and they feel favorably about our brand. They're going to be a huge help. So I needed that person to be able to be that voice to some of those folks as well.
Yeah. So then in your conversations back and forth with this candidate, did you realize fit, I'm assuming?
Yes.
and more experience probably than what you initially were thinking.
Absolutely, yes.
Come up with some things that you weren't thinking?
Oh, absolutely, and almost help shape almost a new job description, if you would, to say what could they bring to the position. It was not an entry-level position anymore, so having to prove the value and what the return was very important to us. So if we're going to be spending, in some cases, 2x what you were planning on spending, you need to show that value and what other portions that they can bring to the table, and really expand that job description into something that, we can mold. And then hopefully at some point with growth, even continue to build on that.
Right. So taking that to the building and paying probably more than what you wanted, being the CEO, did you get to sign off on that, or did you have to?
No, we have autonomy. I mean, I have a board that I work with if it's something crazy, but they give me full autonomy to do things. And I think the one thing I always want to stress with these candidates or folks that are looking for jobs is just to be authentic and be transparent.
Yeah.
And what the applicant, where they are in their career, what they're interested in doing, and what that growth looks like. What does success look like now, and what does success look like down the road?
Right.
And that helps align with strategy and vision in many cases. So it's good to be transparent. I guess you got to be careful if you don't think that strategy is going to work with what they're looking for, but ultimately that transparency is great up front.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And sometimes people, though, when they're interviewing, sometimes some transparency might be a deterrent for them.
It could.
I mean, I can say I've run into that where I've been transparent about things, and I think that information was not known.
It's probably better still to do it before the process than once you get involved.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. So you're now ready with this person and been hired on. So how was the process of telling the applicants that may have gotten through so far, sorry, but you didn't get it? Because that's always again, going through the job process, I've gotten the thank you for applying, but no, without any type of explanation. And when I followed back up, I don't get a response. I've actually had a company have a call with me that said, this is why, which was amazing. Haven't experienced that.
Yes.
Or you just don't hear anything. So that, for the people that are out there that are looking, what's your process? Like, what do you feel doing the hiring should be the right process? And also for the applicant that's not hearing anything, like, what should they do?
So it's probably a little different for a smaller organization like Bluefin, where we don't have like a crazy robust HR. We do, but I'd like to, with my hires that are going to be working directly for me, I like to be that person. Yeah. And I'm a people pleaser, so it is very difficult for me to tell somebody they didn't get it. But again, going back to authenticity and transparency is important to me. But it's the hardest thing in the world, because you're invested. You're actually invested in those people they're telling you what they want to do as the next step in their career. And it's very difficult to tell them, sorry, you didn't make it, but I'd rather be authentic and transparent. It's a small industry. Yeah. You're going to end up working with those folks, and you want them to be favorable about you, but in fairness, I'd like to try to promote those folks with other areas that they may be a better fit.
Right.
Whether that's culturally, that wasn't an issue for us, or whether it was just the right time or the different candidates. I've been very lucky that my last two positions, and I know luck comes with hard work, but we've had some extremely good candidates that on any given day would have gotten the job with their eyes shut. But we've run into, sometimes there was somebody else that was just a little bit better fit. And that could be a variety of things. It could be experience, it could be culture fit, or it could just be the right place at the right time. It could be what salary range they're looking for versus somebody else. There's a lot of different factors that go into that. It's not an easy decision when you get down to the end, because, it's like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. Right? You're very committed.
Down to the last, you're very committed.
You're giving the last a rose, and you actually want that there's other folks that you're like, in any other capacity, this person would have gotten this role. But we've been very lucky at Bluefin that we've got a lot of interest. There's a lot of people that love the trajectory that we're on. because we have a lot of fun, right? So fun is, and this is your life, right? This is somebody's life. You don't want them to actually go to work and regret it every Sunday, worrying about having to go to work on Monday. So this is something that we instill when we're going through the interview process. We want them to know what the culture's like. We want them to know that they're going to enjoy this job and they can see themselves here in this career. So at the end, on that final rose, it becomes they're invested and you're invested at that point. So candidates that are getting frustrated understand I'm sure it's frustrated if they're without a job, but it's sometimes equally as harder on the employer that has to say no because they would have been a perfect fit if it hadn't been for other superstars.
Exactly. So then what is your recommendation? Because I know I've asked, right? Follow-up call, what could I, what were you looking for? Were you looking, and not even, I ask it in a way that if they're going to say, oh, we were looking for somebody that lived in a specific area, not outside of the area, totally fine. That's great to know, because then I want to take that and say, oh, to somebody I may know, right? So is it okay for those candidates that don't get the job to ask potentially why?
It is, absolutely. And if they were invested in that role and they really wanted it, they want to probably be positive about that. Unfortunately, it's not easy to be positive about, but that person who is doing the interviewing that became invested may actually help them get their next job. Could actually give them recommendations on what they could do differently the next time. In many cases, there wasn't something different to do, but they may actually say, hey, have you thought about? Or here's a few people I know that are growing and they may be good fits. This is somebody to look at and invest in.
Which is amazing, because I don't think we do enough of that, just in my recent experience too, but in talking to others that are looking, I don't think there's enough companies, recruiters, hiring managers, whatever, that are willing to give that feedback. So guys, if you can do that, that's amazing for everybody, just to help us all, because like you said, it is a very small industry.
It is. In the AV industry, I think what's made me addicted and why I've been in it for so long is the people, first and foremost. And the people will look out for each other. It's a small knit community, but there's also deep rooted relationships there. And if there's a potential to go back and look at these hires and say, hey, we've grown, or maybe things didn't work out, right? Because this is a people business, right? And maybe they determined at 6 months that it wasn't the right fit. So keeping those relationships close. I've had folks from a sales capacity that have actually been super negative towards that moment, and it definitely impacts the relationship going forward.
Oh, it does, and it's sometimes you have to take a pause before you hit send on that email, read it a few times, but you can't, if you want to stay in the industry, you can't. And when I used to work at Smart Technologies, I knew my Promethean competitor, and everybody said to me, and we would chit chat, and it was just like, Jen, why are you making friends? We all have a job to do, and you never know when I'm not going to be at Smart, which I'm not. I'm not sure if that gentleman's still at Promethean or not, but who knows? He could walk in here today, and I'd be like, oh my God, and totally not be there.
But they may actually help you get your next role.
Exactly.
Yeah, when I was with Chief, I was friends with my competitors, and the same thing with Brightside, not necessarily competitors as much as folks that couldn't use you, right? And those, right now in my role at Bluefin, some of those folks that are now our closest partners, and some of the people I'm closest with in the industry, which is you have to be an ambassador for your brand, but you also have to not personalize it so much that it impacts your relationships negatively.
Right. And so speaking of brand, you've done different things. How much was a personal brand important? Like if you were talking to somebody, again, because I'm all about personal brand, minus sneakers. Anybody that knows, right? But is that person's personal brand important for you as a hiring over wherever you've worked? As long as it's done tastefully, tactfully, not in obviously in a way, but people are going to know the brand So is that important for you?
It's hugely important, but what you just said is it's got to be done tastefully and tactfully. The personal brand can't overshadow what you could do for that company.
Right.
And we see it in our world that somebody's personal brand sometimes does that take the attention away from what they're actually doing. And there's some people in the industry I look at and I'm like, I don't even know where they work. Right. So as long as you're doing it tastefully and tactfully, as you said, it's definitely important because that person has they have their own flavor, right? And they're representing a brand out there. So as long as somebody doesn't put their personal brand ahead of the company that is actually writing their checks, I think that's extremely important to have that voice and that personality.
Well, and it gets your name as the company associated.
Yes.
So wherever they're going, if it's because they're speaking at an event or doing an event because of their personal brand, then it's going to say Frank Pisano, Bluefin.
Yes, exactly.
Or wherever.
Yeah, and honestly, it's the folks that are in our industry are great and mostly a very genuine community anyway, and they're doing the right thing by themselves, their organization. So it's done more tactfully than others. But this industry, it is important.
Yeah.
And that getting that personality that actually works well with your company that's that special sauce, right?
Right. So outside of the marketing, how important is it for someone to have, because I see this all the time, and I have a huge passion on getting the youth into the AV industry.
Absolutely.
Right? And I spoke at my son's career day grant, who's in 8th grade. But knowing the students that were there, and when I talked to them, for 2 questions they asked me were, how much money could they make? And we know, depending on what you're doing, you can make a ton of money.
For sure.
And did you need a college degree? And I'm looking at some of these students, and I know I live in South Florida. I know where they come from. I know that potentially college might not be an option for them. So outside of marketing, if they're looking at a sales position, or if they're looking at, even marketing, because these kids nowadays are doing so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how important is that degree on a resume? Why is that now with today's market and the way social media and quote unquote influencers, why is that still so important on a job application?
Well, I think it depends on the position for sure, but it also depends on your competition for that role, right? So it's just like anything else. You're going to go against. You're going to have the right list of candidates, and there's going to be pluses and minuses. And there is something to be said about a degree. It means you focused in an area. You became maybe a micro expert in whatever you became, whatever you got your degree in. There is you have to have discipline to get through tests. There's a lot of things that getting a degree teaches you. No, but some positions, it's probably not as necessary as others. And others, it's a competition. What do you have versus what some of the competitors have?
So if that's on there, do you think it should be a deterrent for someone that does not? But if that person might have experience, or that person has a portfolio of things, should it then be written up in their cover letter maybe, or somewhere on there that I have these things to show you, but they shouldn't be, they should go, oh, I can't apply for this because I don't have the degree. I need all of the other expectations.
I would still definitely recommend applying and bringing the other portfolio items that you bring to the table that may overshadow, because again, the pluses outweigh the minuses. Right. Some of the best hires that I've had in sales didn't have a college degree. Now it does teach discipline. There's a lot of knowledge you get from having a college degree, but it's not the be all end all. Right. If you bring the other things, whether that's experience, whether it's just a tenacity, it depends what that role is, how important it is. But I would definitely I would recommend to still try, still apply, but bring the other things forward. If that is a requirement for the job and you don't have it, just make sure you do the other things much better than the other candidates. And ultimately, it may come down to if it's a big organization and it's an HR department, that is the be all end all, and that will cut them. Then you're going to have to find a way to the hiring manager and tell your end of the story. We are so lucky nowadays with social and with LinkedIn. It is, if the people that are good at LinkedIn can find ways to navigate And during the hiring process, that is important.
Yeah.
If I apply, if I have an application out there on LinkedIn or something along those lines, I have a new opportunity, and they find me and send me a personal message, it definitely gets them an extra look at their resume.
Right, because they're taking the time, reaching out, and that also shows, I think, tenacity, and they're not afraid.
But it's so, when you personalize something, it goes so much further too. There's so many times where I got out of those 70-something applicants, and then there's so many other positions I can look at where it's a cut and paste of a cover letter. Their resume doesn't tailor it to a specific role. If you're just going to be in a cut and paste, the hiring manager is thinking that you are just blasting out 70 a day.
Right.
And that is not what you were looking for, and somebody else is going to overshadow.
Yes. Well, and that's why that's why I'm doing this is to help those people, right? To get them to understand. So, one last question, because as the person that does the hiring, when you're interviewing the person, and again, I've gotten this question, and I know multiple people get this question, so we're trying to unpack exactly why the question is asked and what the right answer should be. You see somebody's not at a job. They're now several months unemployed. Why the question of why are you not working at? So and I have some ideas, but what's the reasoning kind of behind that?
Why we ask the question?
Yeah, why do HR ask the question?
I would always go back to just being transparent and honest, because your network is going to help so much with that, and or your lack of network potentially impact. I would always recommend that the truth always wins. If it happens to be a family matter, or happens to be you've had trouble and you haven't found the perfect role. A lot of people at a certain age range are looking for that next best thing because they're not looking to hop.
Right.
So I would actually say the other thing you see is whether they've been out of work or not, if they've hopped jobs a lot, that usually becomes a question too. So it's the same question you asked if you've been out of work for a while or if you've been a job hopper. It doesn't really change. Right. It's just answering it with honesty. Maybe after the pandemic, people lost their job, then they haven't found the right role for their career.
Right.
And if that's the case, it's not really a red flag at all.
Okay.
And it may actually may excite the candidate or the hiring manager that they're looking for the right perfect role to stay in longer term.
So along the lines of transparency, let's say somebody, regardless if they left or got fired or whatever the reason is, but somebody's not going to say, I thought my boss was an asshole.
Well, unless that person knows that they're an asshole.
Well, you don't want to say that.
You don't want to say it,
but you don't want to say, I had conflict for, don't know why, but I had conflict with people that I worked with. So if people don't want to give that, because then it could be a reflection on the candidate.
It could.
But it could also be, like you said, transparent. You don't know what's going on in the candidate's life. Everybody's life is since the pandemic. People have, being alone for so long for some people, So
I know we're social beings.
We are social beings.
We don't want to be. But if you find
what's the correct answer? If that person, if you don't want to say, well, my boss that I worked for was a real jerk, or like somebody I worked with was harassing me and the company didn't do anything about it. You don't want to say that.
No, you got to be politically correct on how you say that. But again, if you don't say it and that person knows that network and finds out that it'd be better off coming from the candidate by coming from a third party.
Right.
But there is ways to tactically say we didn't agree on the strategy and the vision. We didn't agree on the working environment. We just had differences of opinion, and it wasn't. It was starting to become a hostile work environment and corporate politics, and that does exist.
Yes, it does.
I have candidates that maybe their job they were micromanaged, and there's a way to say that their boss was an asshole without saying an asshole.
Yeah.
But the network stuff is important. You're going to find out from the non-references what they think of that employee with LinkedIn now, and to be able to figure out mutual connections. It's pretty easy, and to go and find out what that character of that person is.
And like you said, with mutual connections, you also could probably look and see where they, even by where the person potentially may have worked, and you go, okay,
it's a small
It's
industry.
a small industry.
And we're super connected people,
Yeah.
right? So you're going to be able to find out. Generally, you're probably going to know the employer
Yeah.
anyway. So you'll probably have an inkling, but it would be better off coming from the candidate
Right.
than it would be coming from a third party.
Right. Awesome. Well, I think this is great. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad that for those of you that are listening, we're going to be attending the Digital Signage Federation Mix and Miggle here today in Tampa. So, Frank, where can people find you?
Sure. So they'll learn more about Bluefin on thebluefin.com.
Make sure there's the in there.
Bluefin in there. And then obviously follow me on all the social worlds of Twitter or whatever we call it.
Whatever it is.
And LinkedIn is one of my number one tools that we use. But it's been a fun ride, and I appreciate you reaching out to me because I love to talk about helping people on their career path.
Yeah, this is awesome. Hopefully everybody enjoys, and thank you, and hopefully you get some business out of it too.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.